Well, the two reasons for writing this book. One was that I was part of the Milan Expo and I was one of their global ambassadors. So my publisher, who sniffed at a commercial opportunity in that, said he wanted me to write a short story basing it on food because he wanted to publish something around the time that I was going to be in Italy for the expo. Except that I said I would do it, except that I wasn't very sure that I could write to orders. So I said I would, write whatever that I wanted to base it on something else, but I would incorporate food in some way. So I had this love story in my head for a long time, and I didn't know that I didn't feel right about writing just a love story. I mean, I thought I needed something else to elevate it. And then suddenly when I had this commission to write a food-based narrative, I decided I was going to write a novella because I didn't want to write a voluminous book. I just wanted to write something crisp and something that kind of did what I wanted it to do, which was basically give me a break from the other book I was working on and I'm still continuing to work on at this point, which dealt with the ghastly subject of child trafficking. So child trafficking, and I was researching it, and I, just as a researcher myself, I was completely broken and shattered by what I had seen and what the children I had met, the victims of various trafficking rings, etc. And I needed something to restore my faith in humanity. I actually needed to believe in happy endings. So I thought then I was going to write something. And for me, everything begins and ends with my writing, the way I deal with life. So I said I was going to write something which would make me forget that horrible world that I had walked into with my eyes wide open. And so then I started to work on this, and it actually kind of helped me heal more than anything else. And it was also a horrible time for me because my dog had just died. So all of it was bad. My dog had died. I was dealing with this world of child trafficking, and I hit this absolutely abyss in my head. And I knew I had to get out of it. And the only way I could do that was creating this almost make-believe world where everything works out right. Books on food, actually I have, there's Donna Flor and Her Two Husbands by Jorge Amado, the Brazilian writer. It's a brilliant book, and if you haven't read it, I urge you to read it. It was made into a film too, but I haven't seen the film, so I have no idea what it's like. But it's about Donna Flor, who runs a cooking school, and her first husband who dies and then comes back as a ghost and perches on the headboard of the bed and constantly tells her what to do. And then she's married to another man who's a much more, regular kind of bank clerk kind of a person, whereas the first husband was someone who was a philanderer and does all kinds of things. So he's constantly sitting there and telling his wife about various things that she should be getting right and so on. So she uses food quite interesting. See, this whole book was written, and I still believe that it occupies that space of a dream. When you start having a dream, it is where you don't, build up. You just walk into a dream. You're suddenly in the middle of a concert singing. You don't actually have this whole thing of preparing for the same, for the kacheri or whatever. So similarly, I wanted it all to happen like, it's just suddenly one of those things that you jump into abruptly. And you leave the story also in a similar fashion. So I was not going to go into long discussions, long character building exercises or anything. This is, there is this word, phrase in French, amuse-bouche, which is basically something to, tease your palate. So this book is a little like that. Well, okay, see, One is that I was looking at Tamil cuisine. I'm never sure if I can say Tamil or Tamil. Tamil cuisine, and I didn't want to do the same convent. See, D for dosa is like saying D for dosa. It's very kind of obvious. And then I was looking for things that were slightly, also some things that were my personal favorites, and some things which were not talked about so much. So in that exotic list, there are three. One is Nagar chutney, then there is Hayagrava, which is a Telugu thing, and then finally there is the Zigarkanda. These are the three things that most people don't know about. Even among Tamilians, I don't think many people know about it. So it was fun to write about it. Okay, so one of the, like I've been telling people when they ask me what is this book about, so I tell them it's about food, love and the God particle. So I give you my explanation of the God particle, which might be completely wrong from what is the expected theory of the God particle. So if you take 100, which is the percentage figure, so 100%, and you break it up into three ways. So in this story, what happens is, like the chapter I read out to you, Lena is there meeting Shulapani, and he asks this very offensive question, can I trust you? And she says, she walks away. So that meeting, and then she comes back, but that meeting could have gone three ways. One, where she walks away to never come back. Secondly, where he just apologizes and she accepts the apology and goes away. And third, where she accepts his apology and stays back to drink coffee. So now, if you were to look at this, break it up, you would see you have 33.333%. So if you do a sum total of it, you still get 99.999. So what is that 0.01% that steers one thing in one direction, makes her take up one option other than the other directions? So there's so this is what I think is the God particle. Where it gives substance to mass, which is pretty much the theory of the God particle, but it gives substance to mass in a way that it fashions destiny in a different way. So similarly, with this book, the ending could have been in three different ways. She could have chosen to stay back. He needn't have invited her to go with him. Or she can choose to go away with him. So what happens is actually again determined by the God. There's countless food memories. I could sit here all afternoon and evening and talk to you about it. But one principal memory, okay, I'm a very carnivorous person. So, one of the things is, when I was, I think, less than about 3 years old, my uncle used to study at the Madras School of Art. And every weekend, my parents, my brother and I would come from Avdi, where I grew up, and we would come into town. And it always was the same pattern. We would visit my uncle, and he had this little place that he stayed at. And then we go to Buhari's on Mount Road for lunch. So then my uncle left for the US when I was about 6. And I've never been to Buhari's after that. So that was like one of the strong, firmly etched memories. And so then, yesterday when I was driving to my home, somewhere in Nilankare, I saw this Buhari's and I told Sham, we have to go there this evening. And kind of rekindle a memory. And then, of course, the big, very important thing was the samosas that you would get at Central Station, with the apple juice, HPMC juice. So those are like very strong memories. Yeah, number 2 is coming up. In May. I don't do that. Unless because I have to write a sequel, like I'm doing the girl, I have to try to go back because sometimes I might have forgotten little details, like maybe I've said they met at a point, I need to refresh my memory. When I'm working on a book, at that point, that's a book I like. The moment I finish writing it, then goes into the past. Then I have to move on to the next book. Jojo is this dog, friend's dog, who came to stay with me last year in September, and he's like this stuffed toy. And dog with absolutely no sense of fun, only duty. he doesn't even know how to play. So and the thing is, but he's a typical lap dog, so he wants to sit on your lap. And so he'd come from Nairobi, the poor boy, he'd come from Nairobi and they kept him in quarantine, and then he came to my home straight from there. So I think he was like, starved for human company, he was upset and all those things. So he just wouldn't go off my lap, he'd stay completely on my lap, and I was just figuring out how to write this book. So he'd be sitting on my lap and licking my face every few minutes. So ultimately it was like, I had to write a warm book because that is the kind of feelings that he was evoking in me. No, I mean, see, one of the things that I like doing is, I like taking mythology.
Sounded very real.
Yeah. I like taking mythology and blending it in such a way that it actually seems like it is mythology. It's not really mythology. I mean, by now I've written a book based on Indian mythology. So by now I kind of consider myself an expert on Indian gods and goddesses, the way they behave. See, I think, there are some 3 or 4 books that in my mind have been, to me, significant love stories. Though, I don't know if they would have been treated differently, the films are not being made. Okay? One is Bridges of Madison County, which is also a love story kind of thing. And it is just a love story, there's nothing else to it. Then there is a couple of other, I don't know if they've been made into films, but there's a book called Wintering, which is about the last few days of Sylvia Plath's life. So this whole, it's a tragic love story in that sense. And then there are a couple of other books like that. But I think all of them are very literary because they deal so much with, see, when you look at literary fiction, what is it that separates it from commercial fiction? Commercial fiction is governed by pace, it's governed by the narrative flow and so on, where you make sure that at the end of every chapter you want to know what happens next. And it's not like a desire to just see the story unfold, but more in terms of, that heart-beating thing, I need to know what happens to the character next. With literary fiction, you actually explore the minds of the characters, and the pace is slightly gentle, and it's not so preoccupied with the rest of the world as it is with the characters themselves. So I think, in fact, the love story, when it is not about the standard, boy meets girl, and then whatever happens, and then there is a twist, and then things happen, they separate and they get back together. It is a conventional kind of thing. But if you're working on more micro narratives, then it blends beautifully to literary fiction. I think I enjoy it very much because one, there's a particular, see, I think if you look at all other art forms, whether it's an artist, as a fine artist, or a musician, or a sculptor, or an actor, they all have understudies, they have students and stuff like that. Somehow, writers don't seem to do that. I don't know why. Is it because you think that writing cannot be nurtured, or is it because people are unwilling to share whatever it is that they have? I don't know what it is, but it's always kind of made me wonder. So when I found that I was going to give this a shot and see if it worked, and happily I thought the first batch, I mean, you know, who and the rest of the 9 others, so I had 11 students in the first batch, and I thought what I got out of you was very, very satisfying for me as a mentor. You know, you give your mentees the best you have, and hopefully they will grasp it and take it forward. And I think I like it. I enjoy it because it's also kind of keeps my mind very active, and I have a tendency to kind of live in my thoughts a lot. So this way it gets me out of that and makes me engage in the rest of the world. Well, he's not a new writer, but I think he's one of the writers that I completely and totally adore. And see, so you were talking about love stories and literary fiction. Now, there's another writer who doesn't write love stories, he writes crime. But I think what he writes could pass for literary fiction too. This is Ian Rankin, and his new book is just out, Even Dogs in the Wild. And he has this character like Laura, that is Rebus. And Rebus is something. This is the character he's built over several books, and in this last book, Rebus is retired and everything. But you can see that, you know, the gradual evolution of a man from this, and he's now somebody who is much more laid back, much more introspective, but still doing all the things that he used to, etc. So you see that beautiful. So if you were, say, looking at John Updike's The Rabbit series, the Rabbit Armstrong series, you saw that same evolution in a man's physical and mental growth. And the same thing you see with Rebus as well. So I think that's one of the books that I really enjoyed. See, I don't know anything else that is a greater trigger to memory than the olfactory sense. You know, one whiff of something, for instance, you know, you get a whiff. For many years, one whiff of Amritanjan and you think of Lascano, you know, that kind of thing. You don't need anything else. So it is something that has a very, very strong memory trigger and power, whatever. So, and I think it's something that I rely on greatly within my writing. So if I want to recreate something in my head, all I need to do is kind of sniff at something, and it creates a complete scene in my head. I will have a sense of my audience, especially since the kind of stuff that I write. So there's no way I can pander to an audience because I don't know who my audience is. Happens all the time, every day. Because one is that you can't take it for granted that because you did a good book once, the next book can kind of ride on that. You can't ride on it. And personally speaking, for me, writing is more than just writing. You know, it's for me a very divine thing, and it's something that I wouldn't ever take for granted. I would never ever denigrate it by being complacent about it. So it is something that on a daily basis. See, I still write longhand, so when I sit down each morning, I kind of look at what I've written the previous day to get a sense of continuity. And there are these moments, and I wonder, like, how am I going to write what I wrote yesterday, or match it to it, or whatever. So it is every day is like a new day for me. In that sense. No, this book was not very hard to research because it was pretty much on ingredients, and I did do some work on ingredients. And I looked at several cookbooks books and looked at various myths associated with ingredients and that kind of thing, and so on. Asked a few folks, not the chef category, but cook books. So to get any folk wisdom I could out of them and stuff like that. But generally, research is an arduous part of my writing, and it is something that I do extensively. In fact, like I said, it was research for the cover too that brought me into writing this book. Well, let's say I did one screenplay. Thereafter, there have been several conversations with several movie people, but I've also realized that they're not the greatest people you can count on, because the first few days is great excitement, everybody's calling you and they want to, let's start in the next few days and that kind of thing, and then they just disappear. I don't think it's me, because I've heard that other people say the same. So, except you, Apurva. Okay, as a translator myself, see, the thing is, this is something I only take up a book. I only translated one book, and I took it up because I wanted to translate something else, which is basically a Kathakali text called Nalacharita, which is a piece of beautiful writing more than anything else. And then my publisher said, she said, before you, because it's written in verse, she said, before you actually start work on that, why don't you try a novel? And so I wasn't sure which one to start, and then she said, try Chennai. And I said, what I would do is I would work one chapter and see if it's something that I can do. If I can't, then I'm going to abandon it. So the way I went about it was, at that time I had an assistant who was a Malayali. So I made her read it out to me. And this girl, Minnie, was, she's the perfect reader, because she would read in an absolute flat voice. So there is, it's very important, because if somebody were to put emotions into it, then it starts working on your mind, and you start thinking, you have to give it those kind of inflections. But when somebody is reading it like one of those turn left, turn right kind of thing, so you are able to imbue the words with emotions. And it worked out. As far as my translations go, I can only read Malayalam. So I read through my Malayalam translations. I believe that all artistic people, all creative people, have this huge abyss within them, a huge black space of melancholy, and one is constantly battling it. Okay? If you didn't have it in you, your writing is never going to go to heights. So it's part of, I think it's like what you call an occupational hazard. So you just live with it. I think it's 2 points. One is when you're writing the book and you can see it emerge into something that is a decided form. And then finally, when someone tells you that they read this book and they saw this nuance in it, this angle to it, and you know that what you aim to do has actually worked. Oh, you're talking about the Indian. Yeah, I don't know actually. I really no idea. But generally, if I'm truly politically correct, religious should find out of. So let me just say that I think women are not as obnoxious as men. So the rest is for you to read between the lines. Well, it was about complacency, really, because I thought that, one, I was looking high and dry, and I couldn't find anything that began with an X, except that you can also do, actually you can start something with that sound.
Yeah.
But that was, I thought, too kind of contrived. And then suddenly it hit me about how, and it's something that my mother says all the time, that do taste it before you actually put it on the table. You never know, you could have got something wrong, something that needed rectifying in the last minute. So it just kind of stood out for me in my head. And I also thought it's also about something that's a very important part of cooking, or any artistic process. You can't be complacent and say that, okay, I've done this a million times, so I know it's going to be right. You still can't get it. There's always a chance for error. I obviously, like any other writer, I do draw from my own experiences. I do borrow from what I see around me in terms of people, mannerisms and speech patterns and that kind of thing. But I've written so much, there's very little of me left to put into it. And even from the beginning, there was very little of me that I would actually put into my writing. See, for me, my writing space in my head, and I'm not talking about the physical space, the mind space, is a place I retreat into no matter what. My heart might be breaking, I might be having a jolly good day, it doesn't matter what. I might be having a lazy day or a very busy day, but if I don't write every day, I find myself, my nerves are very free. So I think in many ways I have now trained myself to retreat into my writing space as solace, as escape, as a place that I go to re-energize myself and everything. So for me, when I'm writing, I'm the most happiest person.
So that's the end of our rapid fire round.